see there's like too much wind as far as that goes.
Do you want to put it in one of these corners here?
Yeah, I think we'll put it in one of these corners.
I meant these corners here.
Oh, I see. That's an excellent idea. Thank you. Yes.
You'll be receiving the flag, correct?
Yes.
Order! Arm! To start the ceremony, there could 3 loud volleys from the rifles. It could get pretty loud, so you might want to protect your ears. If there's any veterans amongst us, please join us in saluting our departed comrade whenever we salute. For the rest of you, please place your right hand over your heart during the playing of taps. Rifle, port, arm! Unlock. Ready. Aim. Fire! Aim! Fire! Aim! Fire! Ready? Front! Freeze in! Arm! Order! Arm! Freeze in! Arm!
On behalf of the President, the Armed Forces of the United States, and a grateful nation, I present you this flag, a symbol of our great republic, for which your departed comrade Robert has honorably served. Here's a token from the rifle squad representing the 3 volleys from the rifle.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
On behalf of the President of the United States, our armed forces, and our grateful nation, I present to you this Presidential Memorial Certificate for service with honor.
Order! Arm! Rifle, right shoulder, arm. Right face. Forward, march. Freeze in, arm. Charge, halt. Order, arm. Follow. Go.
If anyone would like to say a few words or lay hands and say your final goodbyes on the way out, now would be the time.
Do I just stand here?
You want to stand on the other side?
Okay.
Or what? Here.
Okay.
Connie, where should she stand?
Where do you want me? Right here? Okay.
And then that way you'll be close enough to her.
Okay.
Oh, here.
Just move this way.
This,
No, no.
this way.
We'll flip that.
This way.
There
Okay.
we go.
Alright. I've been told I need to project, so let's work on that. You might have called him Bob or Dad, but to me, he has always been Grandpa. More than a Renaissance man, he was a Prometheus, a defender of humanity, curious, constantly seeking to learn and understand the greater patterns at play in this universe of ours. His love for my grandmother, Kathleen, is the stuff of legend, proof of his extraordinary passion and loyalty. Their love is what makes all of us possible, a love that spans 64 years and the ultimate triumphs and tragedies. As I sat with him last Friday, I tried reading Winston Churchill to him because he used to have all those red hardbound books about World War II. But as I read, he started to grimace and I stopped. Churchill in those precious hours sounded pompous and vainglorious, and my grandfather didn't have patience for fools. He smiled and laughed at me when I commented on the same. Even facing the final hurdles, he was brave and courteous and strong. He smiled at me, even though it was obviously a struggle, and told me his favorite constellation was Cassiopeia. There are so many more questions I wish I'd asked, so many stories I wished I'd learned. He was a consummate storyteller, and I could only hope to learn more of his stories from my mom, Mommy Kay, BJ, Margot. His remarkable life and adventures are gifts that I want to share with my sons. The life of a man who sought the stars and accomplished the extraordinary. My grandfather had amazing eyes. Sometimes they were the open blue of a summer sky, but at other times a hazel solar flare erupted from his pupils. He was sparse with words and praise, but his eyes were always moving, alert, taking apart the universe and bringing structure to its parts. I used to sit next to him when I was a small child. He'd be playing Myst, and the one way that we could spend time together was if I took notes with him on the logic puzzles. I wanted so desperately to be someone worthy of his time and attention. Grandpa has been a driving force in my life and how I interpret and engage with the world. Though one of his favorite sayings was, "There's no cure for dumbass," he also taught me that you always have to check your sources. He told me to never cement something in my brain until I'd found at least 3 different competing sources to confirm my understanding. He told me that I should never ask others to do work I wouldn't do myself. He told me that the words we use and the way we express ourselves with accents and pacing can change a person's stars. And everything he told me has been proven true time and again since those days long ago in that house on Cameo. It wasn't until I turned 21 that I began to learn about Grandpa as a person, as a man who deeply loved his wife, that he had faults and fears, but it was then that he first told me he loved me. And even though I was doing my theater stuff that he wasn't too pleased about, he told me he liked my brain. I couldn't contain my joy and I gave him a long, awkward hug that eventually became our normal. Because in the midst of all of his fears about his diabetes and Mommy Kay's health and more, he found space for and made an effort to see me. In those days in Napa, he started to share some of his stories, like when he'd been airlifted out of Korea, and some of the guys that were part of the evac crew were hoarding hand warmers, and then I almost had to shoot them to get hand warmers for himself and the men who had made that long march with him. But the best stories I didn't learn until recently. When he and Mommy Kay moved here, he met and fell in love with my sons. He would tell me stories about sitting with his mother on her knee when he was just 2, while she read him the classics like War and Peace, and he learned to read and tell between the letters as she drew her finger across each word. He told me about being a young man who always sought knowledge and never was content to coast, having completed all of his K-12 curriculum by age 13, not 18 or 19 like the rest of us. But he didn't just tell me stories of the past. He would look at my sons and tell me what he saw for them in the future. He had a way of doing that, like a kind of time traveler who could sense the potential of a person. Margot told me a story about how Grandpa used to say that the space was like a time machine. We're seeing the light from stars that may have ended their journeys millions of years ago. As he left my home for the last time after we celebrated his 86th birthday, he hugged me and told me that I was beautiful, that he had loved me since I was a little baby in his hands after I'd been born prematurely. It was one of his favorite stories to repeat most recently, and it made me understand perhaps more completely than I had in my life to this point that he had always been there for me, watching, waiting, anticipating, laying the groundwork for inspiration and change. So in a way, he is my time traveler, and I'll continue to seek him, his warmth and wisdom, in the stars.
We just have to leave, and as I said, there's other people who are doing this, and I just wanted to say one small thing. We had 64 wonderful years, but around our 50th anniversary, we found a man's wedding band that was made out of tungsten. Bob was just amazed at that. That was the stuff spaceships were made out of, indestructible. He had this wedding band, and he would, as he'd polish it up, he'd say, "This is like our marriage. Nothing scratches it, nothing dents it, nothing loses the luster in it." I've sent that ring along with him. Bye-bye.
These are the spent casings for our nation's salute.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And an
Take these. We'll get them. We'll get them.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Chet. Thank you for coming all this way.
Grab this, please.
Chet.